Briefcase Crimes contains graphic descriptions of violent events, loud dog noises, and very bad jokes, and is not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, listeners, to Briefcase Crimes. I'm Hannah, and I'm full of terrifying facts about horrific events.
I'm Liz, and I'm full of morbid curiosity.
Elizabeth.
Hannah.
Welcome to 2021. I know this is going to air, a little bit into the year.
Yeah, February, I think.
Yes, I believe so. But for us, this is our first recording of the new year.
Mm-hmm.
How exciting.
Yeah, took a little break.
We took time off for the holidays.
Pre-recorded a bit so that we had some fluff. But
I'm so glad that we're done with that.
Yeah, that was hard.
I sat down, so we had discussed in our last episode, Linda Hazard, we had discussed doing a 2-part episode on Scientology this week.
Right.
However, I sat down to do that, which I have dubbed in my Google Doc the Scientology 2-part mega episode.
Yeah.
It's so intense, it's so much that I'm going to need a couple weeks to write it.
Yeah, I believe it.
There's no way. So instead, I decided to do this case, which you had actually kind of requested. You sent me a TikTok.
Yeah. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I often don't even watch the TikTok. I'm just like,
that's fine.
Oh, a crazy true crime story. And I just forward it because, I don't want to spoil anything for myself.
Yes. Yes. Not that I was going to say I do the same thing, but I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
I just, troll through true crime TikTok and, see if there's any, I'll be like, oh, man, I hadn't even thought about doing that one.
Mm-hmm.
So you sent me this. So today, also, a couple weeks ago, I don't remember which episode it was, we talked about serial killers always having cool names.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Weepy voiced killer.
Ooh.
Because I said, I was like, I'm going to find a bad one. And you sent me this TikTok, and I was like, perfect.
Oh.
Friend of the show, Hazel, has entered the room.
You mean star of the show.
Star of the show, yes. My apologies. She's the one everyone comes to hear.
That's right. Okay, so the Weepy voice killer.
Yes.
Okay.
Otherwise known as Paul Stefani. Spoiler. For anyone who doesn't know how we set this up, I always have the name of the perpetrator as the first slide, and that's for housekeeping purposes so that we know which one it's which. But it does kind of create a Columbo situation where you know the name of the killer from the beginning.
You haven't always done it because we've had the murder trust. We've had the normal stored bank robbery. Those have been the slides. So you could always do something like that.
That's okay, though, because I love the Columbo situation.
Yeah.
Where you know who it is. Now you just got to see Columbo solve it.
Mm-hmm.
If you want, I can talk like Peter Falk.
Yeah, I'm the mystery person here.
You're what?
I said I'm the mystery person.
What does that mean?
Monthly mystery?
Oh.
Wow. Has it been that long?
I thought you meant that you were like a mystery guest. We have somebody on the line. Guess who it is?
It me.
It's Liz, like always. I will also say before we get started, because these pictures do go in the brief, there are a few crime scene photos in this week's brief.
Okay.
They are not overly graphic, but they are photographs of dead bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So, take that into account when looking at the brief. They probably won't be up on social media, though.
No, I don't like to put those ones up. First of all, just because it's disrespectful, and we're not monetized, but if we were, That would
be weird.
make us not monetized for sure. And it would be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Plus,
but the brief is a different monster.
Yeah, because you have to seek that out.
Yeah. So our story begins in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Ooh.
Are you familiar with, like, the geography of that area?
No.
Like, do you understand? So,
No.
St. Paul is right next to Minneapolis, like, right next to, like, across a river. So they call them the Twin Cities.
Okay.
So I'm going to be talking about two big cities in this, but just know that they are, like, a stone's throw from each other. They are very close. And if I'm wrong about that, someone please correct me. I feel like that is what I know, but I feel like that might not be true, but I think it's true.
It could be one of those things where it's like what people say, but not really. Like when people say they're from Pittsburgh, but they're actually from, like,
Monroeville?
Yeah, like 40 or 50 minutes north.
Yeah. I feel like, let me say this. If that's wrong, my friend Mel, who has her own podcast that we plugged a few weeks ago, and is from Minnesota, is going to be mad that I'm perpetuating lies about the great state of Minnesota.
She'll hold you accountable for sure.
She better. Okay, so June 3rd, 1981 is where we start. There were a group of teenagers playing in a field. They were playing, like, football, probably. I don't know. What teenagers do. And they were playing near this construction site. So basically, they were putting in a bypass, making, like, a fancy highway, an interstate. And so this whole area was just basically construction. So nobody was really going around there very much, which is, I think, part of the reason why these boys went there, because there's, like, a big open area that they can do this, and they're not going to get, like, bugged by adults or have to worry about getting hit by cars or whatever. While they're playing, they find a body. Just getting right into it.
Yikes.
Yes, immediately they find a body. And they call the police. Please now look at your first slide.
Okay, let's see. Oh, wow.
Yeah, heavy. Immediate body. Immediate dead person. Police arrive and they find... This is what they find, basically. They find a female victim lying face down. She's wearing these, like, little denim shorts, this red bomber jacket, and then inside she was wearing a little tank top that had a tiger on it. I've seen more pictures of this, but I cannot for the life of me find them online. I will say before I start this, I took a lot of my information from the show Mark of a Killer that's on Oxygen. They have an episode about this. And so I watched through that as I did my outline to just kind of, like, give me a mental push in the right direction, I guess. I don't know what that meant. But they show a lot more pictures of this, including, like, all of her clothes laid out after the autopsy. I cannot find them anywhere. Like, at all.
That's really weird.
This is the picture you're getting. There was no ID on the body. There was no real evidence at the crime scene. But they saw that she had wounds to her chest and her stomach and wounds on the inside of her thighs. And these wounds were stab wounds.
Oh, what a way to go.
Yes. So they had seen that she was... It gets worse. Because they had seen that she had these wounds. They were likely stabs, but they couldn't really, like, get a good look at them until she was getting autopsied. So the medical examiner who autopsied her said that there were 61 stab wounds.
Oh my God.
Yeah. We've talked about that before. Like, just the sheer amount of that is staggering.
Yeah.
Yeah. He also said that the weapon, the implement that was used in this stabbing was likely an ice pick or a Phillips head screwdriver.
Oh, I was afraid you were going to say that. I just had a feeling screwdriver.
So what's weird about that is I actually, the medical examiner never said screwdriver. He immediately was like ice pick. And what's weird about that is the St. Paul police sergeant is interviewed in Mark of a Killer. And he said in his, like, career of being a homicide detective, he had only really ever seen this. Like, people, like, this one time. Like, people don't kill people with ice picks. It's, like, not a thing that happens.
I mean, I have at least 10 screwdrivers. I don't own an ice pick.
Yeah, but I mean, like, people don't... This is, like, an irregular thing to stab someone with. And I think a screwdriver kind of is part of that as well. Like, it's just not what people think of when they're going to stab someone.
Yeah, I would imagine, like, you end up with the screwdriver more if it's, like a crime of passion, not something that you've planned.
Premeditated, exactly. Like I said, she had no ID, but they did find a locker key in her, I think, pants pocket. And that locker key was to a locker at a bus depot.
Okay.
So they went to the bus depot, and they opened the locker, and they found 2 bags. In those bags was... Whirls? It said were and was. In that bag, they found this woman's identification. Her name was Kimberly Compton.
Okay.
She was 18 years old. She was from Wisconsin, and she had just moved to St. Paul the day she was killed.
Oh.
I know. She had just graduated high school, and she had moved to St. Paul to find a job. So, remember from Evelyn Hartley, Minnesota, especially like Minneapolis, is really close to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
It's like really close to the state line. So, it's not like crazy that she was like, I'm going to move to a different state and find a job. It was just like, I'm going to go over there and find a job. Her cousin is interviewed in Mark of a Killer. He is the one who identified her body. And he describes her as being very friendly, outgoing, and very trusting. Because he said she was from a very small town. Mm-hmm. She was just a very trusting person.
Yeah.
Especially, like, this is the early 80s. So we're not even to the point of, like, milk carton kids. Like, people just trusted people.
Right. Like, doors unlocked, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't trust people.
I just can't imagine having to identify a relative, any relative. Like, that whole process has to just be horrible.
Yeah. My uncle had to do that, though. When my cousin died in an ATV accident, he wasn't home when he was out riding and hit a telephone pole. And so when the coroner came, they had to call my uncle to come and identify him. Well, they called somebody to come and identify him.
Right.
But it wasn't a murder, but still.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be really, really, really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it would.
I don't know if that's why she was identified by her cousin, because I feel like it would be harder if it was like her parents or her siblings or anything like that.
Yeah.
So here is where we get into why this killer is called the Weepy Voice Killer.
Okay.
2 days. Oh, wait. Actually, if you go to your next slide, this is Kimberly Compton.
Okay.
I just happened to look at my slides and I was like, wait, I didn't even show you her in life.
Right.
Yeah. I will also say this is the beginning of the 80s, but for some reason I can find like only one picture of each victim that exists.
I mean, that's probably not that unusual.
I guess, but like my parents have albums and albums and albums of pictures from this time period.
Yeah, but if they were a murder victim, like how many photos would be public?
That's true. I suppose.
Yeah. It's probably like the obituary photo and like maybe one more.
That's true. So, now we get into why this killer is called the Weepy Voice Killer. Mm-hmm. 2 days after she was found, the St. Paul Police Department got a phone call to the switchboard. So, this is before they had 911. Mm-hmm. So, they called the switchboard, and at this time, all the calls that came into the switchboard were routinely recorded. Like, this wasn't, like, foresight of recording this particular call. It was just they were all recorded. Just like today, 911 calls are recorded. So the caller confessed to killing a girl, like, right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And police were like, wow, this guy sounds really weird. He's got this, like, weird kind of high-pitched voice, sort of like he's, like, a child.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, he's trying not to cry. Or he is crying, maybe. He was so weird and was just, like, confessing to a crime that they originally were like, maybe this is just a prank. Like, I bet this is just a prank.
Right.
But then he said, I stabbed someone with an ice pick.
Oh.
So, like I said, the sergeant, his name's Sergeant Corcoran,
Mm-hmm.
from the St. Paul Police Department, he had said about, like, he had never seen this before, this ice pick stabbing.
Mm-hmm.
So for the guy to call in and say, I stabbed someone with an ice pick, when that detail wasn't given to the media.
Right.
Was very unusual. Then they tried to trace the call while it was happening, but phone calls have to be a certain length for them to trace it. Like, it has to have enough time for them to trace it. And the killer or the caller kept the call too short for them to trace.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he did this on purpose or if he just was like, okay, I'm done. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I also, these phone calls are they're online.
Mm-hmm.
I have a video linked in the next slide that I will usher you to when the time comes. I wanted basically, like, a video with all of the phone calls in it,
Mm-hmm.
because I know they exist because I heard it on Mark of the Killer.
Right.
But everything I found was either they were weirdly out of order or they it didn't have all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, none of them had all of them. So I'm going to kind of, like, usher you toward that just so you can hear his voice.
Sure.
And I'll link that in the brief as well. But what I was going to say is I haven't heard them in their entirety because they're not on there, like, fully. And I wonder if at the end he was just like, I stabbed someone with an ice pick. I'm so sorry. Okay, love you, bye. Like, just done.
Yeah.
So a few hours after that, though, they got another call from the same person. And he starts some of his phone calls, this one and another one. He starts with, don't talk, just listen.
Ooh.
Which is, like, I understand, but, like, ugh.
Yeah.
Like, why does that feel so gross?
They're just, like, commanding the attention and
maybe
power.
Maybe you might feel differently when you listen to the call.
Okay.
Though. So the call I'm about, I think this is the call I'm about to talk about, is the first one in the video that I'm going to play, that you're going to play for yourself. But he says, don't talk, just listen. He also says, I'm sorry for what I did to Compton. I couldn't help it. And he says that he stabbed her 51 times, which we know was wrong.
Right.
61. But still, for him, do you think he, like, counted as he did it?
Maybe.
I don't know, man. Your next slide that I see you're already on, you cheater, is a YouTube link.
Because I could tell it was a link, so I have it queued up.
Okay, good. So you listen to that on your own.
Okay, let me hit enter.
I might add the audio in here on its own, if I can figure out how to do it.
Okay, let me...
Otherwise, if you want to listen to it and I didn't do that, you can find the link in the brief. Start it now. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goodbye, love you.
I'm actually kind of glad that you did listen to that, because then I can reference them later. But
yeah, no, it's like...
What are your thoughts?
It sounds very disingenuous to me.
Okay.
Like Laura Lee's apology video.
Ooh.
I'm going to be totally real. Like, it sounds
Okay.
very, very fake. Just, I don't know. I just...
Mm-hmm. Like, you don't think that he's doing it because he's actually remorseful. You think he's doing that to, like, throw them off?
I think it's a game.
Or to sound like he's remorseful? Okay.
I think it's a game. I think it's part of, like, serial killers often want to prove, like, they're smarter than the police.
Mm-hmm.
So I think...
Leopold and Loeb.
Yeah. So I think that it is kind of more along that track. Like, I can even call you and you can't even catch somebody, like, as pathetic as me kind of thing.
Okay. It's a decent theory. We'll keep that in mind as we continue.
Yeah, like, prove me wrong, totally. But just based off of that, it seemed very, very forced to me.
That's a fair assessment. I also think it sounds fake and blubbery.
Yeah.
But once we get into more things, I think it can be fake and blubbery, but also not be showing off, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll explain later.
Sure.
So, unlike the first phone call, this second don't talk, just listen phone call was long enough to trace.
Okay.
The call had come from a phone booth at a bus depot.
Okay.
I don't know if it's the same one that they found the locker at, the one that Kimberly Compton had come through.
Oh.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was. But it was a phone booth at a phone booth at a bus depot. Why is that so hard to say?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was, though. Because, like,
Maybe.
Revisiting the scene of the crime, that's another thing.
Could be.
I understand
like,
if there's, like, no proof of that, though.
Well, I know where... I know... how do I put this? Let me continue.
Yeah.
And then and hopefully I can get to it as I continue through here. So they know it came from this phone booth. By the time the investigators had got there, they basically, like, canvassed the area and talked to everybody, and this guy was gone.
Yeah.
By the time they could make it there.
Right.
They also dusted that booth for fingerprints, but because it was a phone booth, there were none that were usable because it was just, like...
covered in them.
Yeah. Can you imagine phone booths in the time of COVID?
Oh, dear Lord.
Absolutely not.
Listen, when I was in, like... because I got my first cell phone in the 8th grade. So I've used payphones, like, for real, pre-cell phone. And
yeah, me too.
even without COVID, they're freaking nasty. Like, oof. No, thank you.
But I feel like that's one of those things that you look at with, like, COVID colored glasses, and you're like, I can't, like, arena seating. Like, you look at it and you're just like, what were we doing?
Yeah, I can't believe I ever let people get that close to me.
Right. If you go to the next slide.
Okay.
What they did was they set up surveillance on the booth. They basically had police officers, like, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, watching this phone booth in case he came back to call.
Right.
But nothing came of that.
Yeah.
While they were watching it, he never went back to that phone booth. And the reason that I say that I don't think this was at the same bus depot was because something happens later at that same bus depot, and they did say this was that same bus depot. Like, I feel like if it was that, especially because they went there, they identified the exact booth, I feel like it wouldn't be... They would have said.
Yeah.
So because they didn't have any evidence at the scene, except for, like, her stuff, which never made it to the scene anyway.
Right.
Because they didn't have a perpetrator in the phone booth, they started analyzing the calls.
Sure.
The 2 calls that they had received.
Yeah, that seems like the next most logical course of action.
Especially because it's the killer talking.
Yeah.
Like, and you know it's the killer. They started looking through recordings from any other unsolved crimes. to see if there was a voice that matched them.
Also makes sense.
Which was very smart.
Yeah.
And what happened was, 5 months earlier, someone had called in and asked for help.
Okay.
There was a young woman who had been found in the snow, which was the last phone call that was in that video, where they're asking the address, and he's saying, but there's a girl hurt here.
On the tracks.
It's the last, yes.
Okay.
Near the tracks.
Yeah.
So now we have to jump back 5 months.
Okay.
To January 1st, 1981. So just after 3 a.m. on New Year's Day, a call came in directing police to the victim of an attack and asking for an ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
And when the police arrived at the scene, they had been directed to... Sorry, it's in a different part of this.
Okay.
I wrote it down in a different part, and then I was like, oh, I need to go back and put that in there.
I'll do that. I do that all the time when I'm putting my outlines. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, I need to move this, and then I just don't.
Okay. So the caller had told them that there was a woman lying in a snowbank by the train tracks near Malmberg Manufacturing Company.
Mm-hmm.
So they arrived at this place. They found a nude woman in the snowbank. She had been severely beaten, and she was alive, but just barely.
Okay.
She had multiple wounds to her head and neck area, and she had been hit over the head with something heavy, and her brain was exposed.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah, so she had been hit hard enough to expose her brain.
Oof.
They rushed her to the hospital.
Good.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And this woman was a 20-year-old Native American woman named Karen Potak.
Ugh.
If you go to your next slide. On the left, that's Karen, and on the right, that is her being loaded into the ambulance on a stretcher. Potak is spelled Potack.
I was literally about to ask. You had me.
BFF soulmates.
I know. So, is she the first known victim then?
She is the first known victim,
Okay.
yes.
Because I know we're back in time.
We are back in time, yes. They called her family, and they told her that they told her the police.
Right.
They called her family, and her family told the police that she was a college student,
Mm-hmm.
and that she had been with her sisters who lived in the Twin Cities celebrating the New Year.
Okay.
They were at a bar somewhere, and they said that she was in like a bad mood, and that she had left the bar sometime after midnight. They weren't like suspicious or panicked or anything about that because they just figured she went home.
Right.
Like I said, she was in a bad mood, so they were just like,
whatever, she dipped.
guess she's going home.
Yeah.
Investigators went to the hospital and spoke to her because obviously she had seen the perpetrator,
Mm-hmm.
but she couldn't remember anything at all.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. She had pretty extensive brain damage and memory loss from this. And the only clue that the police had was that phone call.
Yeah.
Which they then sent to the University of Michigan for voice recognition analysis.
See, I don't understand. Okay, maybe not I don't understand. I get the thought process behind that because that's the only evidence they have. But how, like, what do you have to compare it against?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if their plan, because, like, this doesn't come up again.
Yeah.
So I don't know if their plan was, like profiling through his speech patterns and stuff, because they can do that with written things.
Yeah.
I'm sure they can do it with spoken things.
Yeah, I mean, there's dialects in English just the same, so I could see that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely that, but also, like, oh, he used like these specific words.
He said yins, he must be from Pittsburgh.
Well, not that exactly, but like
Kinda.
if he said if he put these specific words together in this way, it means he's more educated or whatever. But this never comes back up, so
it probably didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, so push it out of your brain.
All right.
Then we move back to June 6th, 1981.
Okay.
So we're back to after the Kimberly Compton case. So they were confident that the call from the Potak beating was the same person who called about the Compton case.
Right. It's pretty obvious.
Yes, and those were both in St. Paul. The homicide department even was calling him the Weeper amongst themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Sergeant Corcoran even said that he was like, the homicide department was like, oh, we have the Weeper again. Like, he's back.
Yeah.
So, obviously now they've hit a dead end.
Right.
All they know is it's the same guy, but they don't know anything about the first case either. Like, there's not a lot of evidence in either of these cases.
Right.
And the thing that's linking them isn't really, like, illuminating anything. It's just...
Like, they know what the weapon is, but they don't have a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
they know what the killer sounds like and where he's called from, but they don't have a killer.
And it's a payphone, so who knows?
Or anything. Yeah. So, what they do now is they decide we are going to open this up to the public.
Okay.
We're going to release a portion of the phone call in the hopes that somebody will recognize this voice.
Sure.
They created a special tip line for this, and I think either just under or just over 150 people called in.
Okay.
And at this point is when the media started calling him the weepy voiced killer.
Right. That makes sense.
Yes. So they had all these tips. They're investigating it. And, like, a good thing about tip lines is that it can bring in the person. The bad thing is you have to investigate all of those tips.
So, fun fact. I don't want to be too specific, but I know people who work for one of the branches of FBI tips. Mm-hmm. And at the time of recording this episode, it's very, very recent after the January 6th insurrection attempt. And the amount of tips that they have gotten since that has been so many that they had to recall employees who have been working from home in order to handle them.
Dang.
So that's how tip lines work for you.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like if you're overwhelmed and inundated with tips, you have to investigate them all.
Yeah, you do.
You have to treat everyone like a credible tip.
Yep.
So, 2 months after that, this is very much like this entire thing is just like jumping forward in chunks.
That's okay.
Kind of. So, because there's a lot of like legwork that's being done between this, so it's kind of just like hitting the highlights, the high points of like actually moving the investigation forward.
You're making it easy to understand, though, so don't sweat it.
Okay, good. So 2 months after the tip line opened, the police were called to an East St. Paul residence to a domestic assault call.
Okay.
Like there was something going on at a residence.
Yeah.
So when they got there, Alan Lopez had barricaded his family in the house and was holding them hostage.
Oh. Well.
We love to see it.
Yeah.
Kind of full Waco situation.
Yeah.
Alan Lopez is another one whose picture was used in Mark of a Killer, but I cannot find him anywhere.
That's so weird.
So he looks like a person. He looks like a guy.
You have to understand these shows have a budget, which we don't.
Yeah.
And they probably are able to actually get information from the police.
Yeah, there's that. And then you know that I worked for a large company, again, trying to not break my NDA.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for a large company who did work on television. Mm-hmm. I worked for a large television station company.
Broadcasting.
Broadcasting. I worked in broadcasting. Says the woman with a podcast. Has no idea what I'm talking about. And so for like any sort of content that they would put into packages and stuff that would go on the air, you have to like purchase subscriptions to like Getty Images or Storyful or whatever to get that exact footage.
Yeah.
It's like a whole thing. So we don't have that.
Nope.
And I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
If you want to see what Alan Lopez looks like, go look on Mark of a Killer. I think it's called Killer Caller. It's on Oxygen, or you can purchase an episode of it for $2.99 on Amazon Prime, which is what I did.
Yeah. Hey, there's our budget.
Yeah.
$2.99.
Police sent in a SWAT team and snipers, and they established a phone line with Lopez.
Okay.
In this phone conversations that they had with him, he confessed that he killed Kimberly Compton.
Okay.
Now, I know what you're thinking.
His name's not on the first slide.
This could be a red herring. Police stormed the house, and they found Lopez's mother, father, and sister all dead.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that didn't end well.
Nope.
Lopez was arrested and charged with murder of them, and all the while he was confessing to all the Weepy Voice Killer stuff. He was like, I did it. It was all me.
Okay.
That confession was not enough for them to just like charge him with the murders, because that wouldn't hold any water in court anyway.
Yeah.
If it went to court, if he didn't just plead guilty, I don't know. But they started digging into his past, and they found that he had a history of assaults and mental illnesses.
Okay.
Now, I took that to be like not mental illness. Oh, that's better evidence that he's the killer. But I took that as like he's mentally ill, so he probably does think he did it.
Yeah.
They also had the phone calls from the hostage situation were recorded. So they took those and they compared them to the Potak and Compton calls to just like roll him out.
Right.
As they were investigating this, they were 6 months into this investigation, and Lopez took his own life.
That solves that, doesn't it?
Well, kinda. He could have taken his own life and been the Weepy Voice Killer, and then he wouldn't have killed anymore.
Right.
But you see that we have more slides.
Yep.
So, yeah. So, but the other problem is they have this lead, and now he's dead, and now they're at a standstill again.
Right.
Womp womp.
Yeah.
So
I do find it a little hard to believe that this guy would sound like this other guy, though.
I feel like it would be very hard to sound like the Weepy Voice Killer. I feel like it sounds like a voice Scott would do.
Yeah.
Like as a funny voice.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
Yeah. So Lopez killed himself after 6 months of investigation, and then another 6 months passed. So a year since they had taken Lopez in, and they hadn't had another phone call.
Oh.
So they were like, maybe he is the Weepy Voice Killer.
Did they publicize that they suspected this guy to be him?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't know if because they didn't really suspect it to be him either.
Right.
They kind of were just like, he confessed, but that doesn't mean anything.
Right. Like, it's like the tip line, like, he said it, so we have to look into it.
Yeah. Then, August 6, 1982, which was 14 months after the murder of Kimberly Compton, in Minneapolis, so across the river, a paperboy was out doing his morning deliveries, and he found a pair of glasses on the ground.
Okay.
So he walked a little bit further in, and what he saw in the forest was he thought it was a mannequin or a dummy.
Oh, I've heard that one before.
Yeah. So he walked up and he like touched the foot of the dummy.
Ooh.
And that's when he realized it wasn't a mannequin.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yucky.
Ryan was a paper boy for like 3 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I can't picture
I was
that.
I always tease Ryan because he like basically didn't have a like job when he was a teenager. He didn't have a job till he was in the Navy, basically.
Yeah.
And he's always like, I was a paper boy. And I was like, you were a paper boy for like a day and then you didn't like it. like, no, you weren't. Now remember, this is in Minneapolis. It's a different police department that's handling this. When they arrived on the scene, they found the body of a woman who had been beaten and stabbed with something circular, like a Phillips screwdriver or an ice pick. And there was no identification on the body.
I have to admit, I don't really know what an ice pick looks like. I'm gonna look it up.
Like, do you know what an awl looks like?
Yeah.
Kind of looks like an awl.
Oh, okay.
But by all means, please look it up.
Yeah.
If you go to your next slide, this is a crime scene photo again.
Oh my.
I feel the need to warn you now.
Yeah.
Because I just sprung that first one on you so quickly.
That's okay. That feels like, now that I actually know what an ice pick looks like, that seems like a very ineffective thing to use.
It's not, it's puncture wounds.
Yeah.
Not so much stab wounds.
It's even thinner than I imagined, though. It would be like literally, I'm kind of imagining like one of those metal barbecue skewers.
Yes.
Like,
it's like that metal bamboo.
well, because I was thinking the wood bamboo skewers, but they make metal ones.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it would like, yeah, exactly. I also like, how effective is that at picking ice?
I don't know.
Even. I don't know. Anyway, so, basically they started studying these crime scene photos because there was no ID on the body. There was nothing that was helping them figure this out. So they were looking at these photos, and basically they saw from the blood, and there were drag marks as well, that she was killed in one position and then dragged over into the forest to like hide it. And so the investigators thought that seemed like somebody who had done this before.
Okay.
He seemed experienced because it wasn't like a crime of passion where he would stab a person and then just book it and leave. This was like, okay, I've killed this person, now I will hide this person, like a whole thing, right? 2 days later, because they're not getting anywhere, they're looking through other unsolved Minneapolis murders, or Minnesota murders rather, and they receive a phone call. Can you guess from who?
From the Weeper voice.
From Ed McMahon. They'd won the Publishers Clearinghouse.
Oh, I wish.
No.
Wish I had.
Unfortunately, it was from the Weepy voiced killer. And he apologized for killing, quote, that girl, and said he stabbed her 40 times. And then this is the second call in that video. The second one where he does don't talk, just listen.
Yeah.
He says, but I apologize for killing that girl. I stabbed her 40 times. And then he mentions that Compton was the first over in St. Paul. Okay. So investigators are like, okay, cool, we have a lead. Yeah. Like, we know these are connected to a St. Paul case. So
also, like, what if they were like, well, he apologized. It's all right.
Oh, he did say he was sorry.
Yeah,
so
look,
nothing we can do about it.
He sounds sorry. Look how torn up he is.
He's so remorseful. Why don't we just let him go? Well, the other thing was, in a lot of these, he kept saying, like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Like, please catch me. Like, get me off the streets kind of, like, ideology. Yeah. Like, I don't know what's going on here. So
it's like the way he says all that stuff, I would like probably believe him if he said he was like sleepwalking and doing it in his sleep and had no idea.
I just woke up and she was dead. Oh, I told Susan this the other day, but the other night I don't know if it was like I was almost out or like what the deal was, but I woke up in the morning and I had hundreds of pictures, like illustrations saved in my phone of Hilda, the plus size pinup.
What?
Hundreds. And I have no memory of this. I don't remember doing this. There's literally hundreds of them.
Oh, that's hilarious. I showed Hilda to Mom, and she loved it.
I love Hilda, but I woke up and was just like, "What's all this?" There's hundreds of them, and I was pleased because I was like, "Wow, look at all this Hilda I have to look at," but also just like, "Hey, Han, you okay?" Like, I do have a sleep condition. I do have, like, it's not unusual that I would be having a sleep disturbance, but, like, what in the world?
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm worried that, like, Amazon packages are going to show up.
They could.
I don't know, man. To lock my phone in the night. Okay, so they got in touch with the police in St. Paul, and they shared their recordings between each other. They're, like, working together now, and they concluded that this was the same person.
Yeah.
Based on the fact that he sounds exactly the same.
Yeah, clearly.
Like, they definitely said this really more fancy in the program that I watched, where they were like, he sounded weepy, he used the same kind of words and the same tone, but, like, it's the same person.
Yeah. It's like, yep, obviously. That's him.
Yeah. So, because of this, they knew definitively that Alan Lopez was not the Weepy Voice killer.
Right.
Because he was dead. Mm-hmm. The calls were coming from beyond the grave. And
obviously, again, you couldn't really replicate that voice. It's clearly not a copycat.
I tried to do it to Ryan earlier, and then I was like, no, let me show you.
Yeah.
I was like, because he would call, what happened was, I was doing the voice, and we both, sorry, we both did this. I was doing the voice, and we said it at the exact same time. I was like, I'm so sorry, and I didn't mean to kill that girl. And then at the exact same time, we both went, yuck. Like, I just went pure goofy. Okay, anyway. So now, police did what we talk a lot about. Like, we said this with Evelyn Hartley, too. They contacted the FBI.
Yeah.
Not only did they contact the FBI, but they contacted the behavioral science unit and asked them to work up a profile.
Makes sense.
Yes. So profilers felt like he was reverting to like a juvenile or childish state when he was making these calls.
I can get that.
And that he wanted somebody to acknowledge it. Like, he was calling because he wanted the acknowledgement of, like, I did this thing and I'm sorry.
Right. Like, he wanted someone to comfort him or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, I feel like, and again, I'll get more into this later about, like, why I feel like it could still not be, like, a genuine crying. But I do feel like he wasn't calling to, like, brag.
Yeah.
Or to taunt them. I do feel like he was calling because he wanted to be caught, or maybe he didn't want to be caught, but he needed to, for whatever was going on in his brain, he needed to say that he wanted to be caught.
Yeah.
And at this point, police just start interviewing people on the street and, like, hoping they're going to come across anybody with this voice.
Well, all right then.
Yeah, like, are you having a good time at Burger King? Oh, yeah, I really am enjoying it. I just love a Whopper.
Oh, no.
Like, I don't know what they were thinking, that they were going to just find this guy, but that is what happened. They were doing that, and it was going nowhere. I feel like this would be an opportune time to do our first ever ad break.
Yeah.
Our first ever actually stop for an ad.
Sure. So we're going to take a little break.
And enjoy this ad. We'll be right back. And we're back. Welcome.
Hey there.
I hope you had a good ad break. The next big break in the case, talk about breaks, the next big break in the case came when a postal worker found a purse in a mailbox.
That's a weird place for a purse.
Yeah, it sure is. The surefire place for somebody to find it, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe he thought it was a trash can. I've done that.
Have you?
Okay, so real story. In Clarion, Pennsylvania.
Oh no.
Down by the post office, the mailboxes, it goes like mailbox, trash can.
Oh, that's dangerous.
And one time I was turning in a jury duty form to say, I cannot go to jury duty. I don't live in this county right now. I live in Clarion. And I almost put it in the trash.
That would have been a problem.
I would have been going to jury duty.
Yeah.
Actually, I think if you don't return it, you get, like, fined or something. I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure there's some kind of penalty.
Yeah. Anyway, postal worker finds a purse in a mailbox. And this mailbox was at the same bus terminal that same bus terminal that Kimberly Compton used when she came to town.
Aha.
See why? I just knew that if that booth was at that bus terminal, they would have said.
Yeah.
Oxygen wouldn't let me down like this.
Obviously.
Luckily, in that purse was an ID.
Oh, good.
And that ID belonged to 40-year-old nurse Barbara Simons.
Ooh.
Who lived in South Minneapolis.
We haven't seen Barbara yet, have we?
We have seen Barbara. We just didn't know she was Barbara.
Oh.
Police used that identification to identify the body that was found by the paper boy.
Okay.
She had a friend who worked as a bartender at Hexagon Bar, which was like a neighborhood watering hole.
Mm-hmm.
He is interviewed in Mark of a Killer, and he describes her as being nice, laid back, and caring, and said that she knew everyone in her neighborhood. If you go to your next slide, this is Barbara in life. On the night that she was killed, Simons went to Hexagon Bar, where her friend bartended.
That's good though, right? Because we've got a witness, perhaps.
Indeed. This is where things really start picking up steam.
Okay.
That's why I felt like it was a good time to do the ad break.
Yeah.
So, one of the bartenders, who was her friend, and one of the waitresses had spoken with her and seen her in the bar, obviously. Obviously, they had seen her if they'd spoken to her.
Right.
They said she was in a back room with a white male and made a comment to one of the waitresses and said, I hope this guy's okay because he's driving me home.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
Oh, Barb. He wasn't okay.
It's another thing with, like, I cannot picture that. I cannot picture meeting somebody and being like, yeah, drive me home. Like, people who have one-night stands, how are you not terrified of being murdered?
Also, I kind of feel like if she knew so many people, you couldn't get anybody else who you knew?
I don't think it was about that. You know what I mean?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I think it was going to be a hookup.
See,
I don't think it was going to just be give me a ride home.
I completely wrote that off as a possibility because I know where it went.
Yeah, no, I think that was the plan. Was like,
well,
I like this guy. I don't even want to say it was going to be a hookup. It could even be like, I like this guy. I want to spend more time with him.
Sure.
Because, like, well, you know, I've done that in college. Like, if I knew somebody from class and I wanted to get to know them better, like, I had a car.
Yeah.
And if they were going to take the bus, I'd be like, let me just give you a ride home. We both live in the same apartment complex.
Yeah.
You know, like, it might have been something like that. I don't know.
I would imagine that kind of college culture is fairly similar to, like, small town safe culture.
I mean, she lived in Minneapolis. This wasn't a small town.
Yeah, but you mentioned how, like, there's that safety factor.
Yes, there's that idea of, like, the 80s being just like, whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone's fine.
Right.
The bartender said to the police that the man she was with was a white male in his 40s, about 6 feet tall, muscular, and with a mustache.
I don't know why,
Hulk
but I
Hogan.
wouldn't have thought mustache.
Yeah, I mean, once you see this guy, he doesn't look anything like you'd expect him to look like.
I don't know. We'll see. I've got an image in my head now. Now that you've said
Can you
mustache.
describe it?
No.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. You don't have an image in your head.
I have an idea.
We've never talked about this on the show.
I have aphantasia, which means I don't have a mind's eye. I cannot see images in my head. So
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I've lived my whole life with it.
And just now realized.
Here's the thing. There's two different, like, mental things like that. There's where you can't see and where you can't hear. Like, you don't have that internal monologue. I do have an internal monologue, and I think that I'd rather have the internal monologue and not the picture than the other way around.
I don't know. I thought about that the other day because I just started reading a book that I'll talk about later, and the characters in it are Irish, and so my voice in my brain is doing an Irish accent, and it's very nice. And I was thinking about if you didn't have that, how hard it would be to read.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, Liz has aphantasia. Please don't bully her.
You can. My friends all do it anyway. So mean to me.
It's love bullying. So detectives started looking at mugshots of anyone with a violent assault charge.
Okay.
They looked at more than 150 mugshots for this.
I don't think they're going to find it there.
They narrowed it down to 8 photos.
Okay.
Created a photo lineup. Took that to the bar and showed it to the staff.
Something I would not be able to partake in.
Well, do you think if you saw somebody and then I showed you a picture of them later, you could tell that was them?
It depends on if they had, like, any extremely distinct features.
So you wouldn't be a very good eyewitness.
No. Like, I can do, like, memory recall, as in their shirt was red, their eyes were blue, but I wouldn't be able to, like, describe a person well enough to do, like, a sketch, for example.
Yeah. Well, none of these staff had aphantasia because they all identified the same man.
There you go.
And his name was Paul Michael Stefani.
There he is.
I was reading his last name as Stefani, and then I watched some things about him, including the oxygen thing I keep talking about, and they were like, oh yeah, Paul Stefani. And I was like, I don't know why my brain was not just like, oh yeah, Stefani, that's a last name. Like Gwen Stefani.
I immediately said Stefani.
I immediately was like, Stephanie? Stephanie? Like, no, it's Stefani, like Gwen, but without an F.
Yeah.
So they recognize this person. They point him out to the police. And so the police and the attorney's office start looking into his background. He was from Austin, Minnesota.
Okay.
He had brushes with police in the Twin Cities before. He had trouble keeping a job. He had a prior conviction for aggravated assault.
Okay. I'm a little surprised.
Why?
Well, with the phone calls and everything, if I am to believe that he was actually remorseful, it's hard for me to consider that he would have committed crimes before and not, like, been as, like, guilt-stricken.
Well, he got caught before.
Yeah.
Most importantly, he had previously been employed at the Malmberg Manufacturing Company.
Oh, no.
Where Karen Potak was found.
Ugh.
That's where I said I had it written down here, but I didn't have it written down when he called.
Yeah.
So the St. Paul Police Department, like, immediately sets up surveillance on him. Because, duh.
Yeah.
They don't have enough to bring him in, but they have enough to, like, put him on surveillance.
Right.
So they were watching him at his house, his apartment building, and one night he left in his car and they tailed him over to Minneapolis. But at some point, they lost him. They lost him, so they went back to his apartment building to wait for him to come back.
Oh, no.
Several hours later, police received a call from a bystander asking for assistance.
Oh, no.
He had basically stumbled upon a man on top of a woman stabbing her. He, I don't know, yelled out, exclaimed, did something, was going to help. And the guy turned on this bystander. So the bystander ran.
Yeah.
To save his own life, basically. Yeah, and the suspect got into a vehicle and drove away.
If I were the police that tried to tail him and lost him, I would resign.
Yeah,
I don't think I could live with that.
Man. Yeah, that's fair.
Like, I'm not saying, like, oh my God, he's so bad at his job, he should resign. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. What
You're
saying
saying
is...
that you could not handle having that guilt.
Yeah, because you had an opportunity. For whatever reason, it didn't pan out. You know, no judgment. Tailing people's not exactly the easiest thing in the world. You know, but, that would be so hard to know that if you had been following, if you hadn't lost him,
you could have intervened. Yeah.
Oof, that's rough.
Yes. So when the police arrived, the victim had been stabbed 13 times by something small and circular, like a screwdriver or an ice pick.
It's so sad that I immediately was like, oh, that's not that much, because in comparison...
True, yeah. So she had been stabbed all those times, but she was still alive.
Good.
Her name was Denise Williams. She was a 21-year-old sex worker, and she was transported to the hospital where she would recover.
Good.
Next picture. This is Denise Williams. This looks like a prior mugshot for something.
Yeah.
Probably solicitation. But it could have been anything. I also want to applaud the Wikipedia page for the Weepy voice killer, Paul Stefani.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Because they call her a sex worker.
That's what happens when things are open source.
Yes. I saw that and I was so excited. Because remember, a couple episodes ago, I was talking about something I was reading was calling them whores.
Ugh.
And I was like, the word is sex worker. Like, prostitute isn't even okay.
No.
Yeah, so I was very pleased to see some positive change happening. So, she was alive. She had not had her brain come out.
Thank God.
So, she was able to tell police about the man who attacked her.
Good.
She said that he was a customer, and that afterward, he had offered to drive her home. And so she was like, whatever. And she became suspicious when he started taking a weird route. And then he brought her to a warehouse area. He pulled over. He reached into the glove box. And she said he removed a screwdriver, which she thought was a screwdriver. And he began to stab her.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I would probably assume it was a screwdriver, too.
Is that a metal bamboo? She, in an incredibly, quick minute of thinking, reached onto the floor and grabbed a glass bottle. They said it was like a Coke bottle. And she hit him in the face with it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then climbed out of the car.
That's one thing, sex workers, if one thing, have been faced with adversity, and I feel like, of course, not always sweeping statements, but I feel like that's one demographic of people that probably know how to hold their own at least a little.
Yeah, because they have to.
Yeah, it's tough out there.
When she climbed out, he chased her, and that is when the bystander saw this happening.
Thank goodness for
that. How about it? Shortly before they got the call from the bystander, though, the Weepy voice killer had called police. So he had gotten away and called the police before the bystander could get to the phone to call police.
I'm just thinking of this timeline, and it's just a little wonky there.
Well, think about this. The guy that ran away from the scene because he was being threatened and was going to call police, it's not like he could
whip out his cell phone.
He didn't have a cell phone.
Yeah.
He had to go find a phone. So he had time to get back to a phone to call the police. So he called the police and he asked for an ambulance to be sent. But unlike the Karen Potak phone call where he asked for an ambulance, he was asking for an ambulance to be sent to his house because he was bleeding profusely from the face and head.
Oh.
Because he had been hit by a bottle.
Yeah.
And that's what's so great about head wounds, is they just bleed and bleed.
Yep.
Yeah.
They sure do.
So, the police who were at his apartment building were like, hey, why are there ambulances arriving?
Yeah.
Like, they were confused. Yeah, he had told police when he called that he had been beaten up. It was an assault/robbery. If you go to your next slide, this is the inside of his car after the Denise Williams stabbing.
Okay, hold on. Let me get to it here. Not that much blood. It could have been worse.
No.
For a head wound.
Nope. And for stabbing somebody 13 times? Yeah. So then police, obviously, Stefani was taken to the hospital because of his bleeding head.
Right.
And so police showed Williams a photo lineup, and she picked out Stefani as the man who attacked her.
And they were like, oh, he's next door. Getting stitches.
I don't know if they were at the same hospital. I told Ryan about this earlier, and I was like, he was also in the hospital. And then I was like, I don't know if he was in the same hospital.
Yeah.
But at this point, they were like, yo, we got to arrest this guy.
Yeah.
Because we at least know he stabbed this lady.
Yes. If nothing else, they've got an attempted murder.
Yes. 100%. So, your next slide here is, this is Dawn Brown, investigator for the Minneapolis police.
Hold on one second.
So the two police people that they talked to on Mark of a Killer are this man and Sergeant Corcoran. So you have a Minneapolis man and you have a St. Paul man. And I included him here because he has a quote coming up, so I was just like, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
And pictures were hard to find, so here's Dawn Brown. So they brought Stefani in, and this Dawn Brown interviewed him. And he was saying that he was, the victim of an assault robbery, and his voice while he was talking about this was fairly low, like he was just talking like a person. And then he said that he, being Dawn Brown, pulled out a file folder and opened it, and it had victim photos from the Weepy voice killer. And at this point, Stefani became really angry, and he said in a high-pitched, weepy voice, "You're not going to pin those on me." And that's what I was saying to Ryan. "You're not going to pin those on me." Yuck. And it went all goofy. Yeah. Dawn Brown says it was like he changed personalities.
Yeah.
I will say, this man does not have DID.
Okay. I was wondering.
This is not a DID thing. Anyone listening that has DID, we don't think you're a killer. This man's not a killer either.
I was like, I've never heard of that.
This man doesn't have DID.
I was like, I've never heard of somebody with DID being a criminal.
A killer now.
Well,
yeah. No, he said it was like he switched personalities, not that he did switch personalities.
Okay, good. That's a good distinction to make.
Yes, he does. This man does not have dissociative identity disorder. Not a thing that he has.
Right.
So then he was arrested and charged with the attack on Williams and the attack on Barbara Simons.
Good.
He was not charged for Karen Potak and Kimberly Compton.
Why?
Because Williams and Simons had eyewitnesses.
Oh.
Potak and Compton did not.
So circumstantial, not enough evidence.
Yes. And also, I'll explain later why, because the only thing they'd be able to present in that is the vocal recordings. And I'll explain when the actual trials come up why that would be
inadmissible,
a bit problematic. Yeah. So police started looking further into his past at this point. They found that he had a really tough childhood.
That's always the case.
Yeah. I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer didn't.
No?
Jeffrey Dahmer had a very nice childhood, very good relationship with his parents.
I was just going to say, what did his mom do to him?
Nothing. He had a tough childhood. His parents were divorced. His mom got remarried when he was 3. And he said his stepfather was very abusive to them.
There it is.
Yeah. He had also had a girlfriend from Syria at some point when he was a youngster. And at some point, she was sent back to Syria to be in an arranged marriage. And that was, like, really heartbreaking to him.
Okay.
Investigators, including the FBI profilers, feel like he felt really betrayed and that these murders and attacks were, like, a way to get back at her. Like, it sparked, like, a hatred of women kind of thing.
Yeah.
He was also a devout Catholic. And they feel like, they being the police and the profilers, feel like, they feel like calling and confessing was, like, a thing for him of being, like, I have to at least confess so that I can be absolved from this crime.
Yeah. Here's the thing. There's a decent chance that he would have been safer confessing to a real Catholic priest.
Yeah.
Than to the police.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, there are calls. In some of those calls, he talks about how he's never going to heaven. Like, there's no way I'll get into heaven.
Yeah.
So I think that's another part of it is, like, he felt like he had to call to, like, save his soul or something.
So he wasn't remorseful for what he did, but he was fearing
might have been
the
scared
consequences.
for himself. Yeah. Absolutely. I also feel like he could have been calling and faking remorse to add to the absolution of it or something. That's why I said, like, it doesn't have to be taunting for it to be disingenuous.
Right.
On February 28th, 1984, his trial began. Prosecution tried to call in a voice recognition expert, but the judge wouldn't allow it. He said it was, they used a word and I don't remember what it was, but basically he was just like, no, you can't have one. Sorry.
That's interesting.
But what they did was they called in the next best person, Paul Stefani's sister. And she cried on the stand, broke down crying, and admitted that that was her brother, Paul. He was sentenced to 18 years for the attack on Denise Williams and 40 years for the murder of Barbara Simons.
Wow. I mean, rightfully.
Yes.
I'm kind of used to so many criminals getting a lighter sentence. I feel like that was almost shocking.
Yeah. Then we jump forward to 1997.
Okay.
Law enforcement got a phone call from... Give me a second. Law enforcement got a phone call from Oak Park Heights Prison.
Okay.
From the authorities at the prison. They said, Paul Stefani wants to talk to you. If you do him a favor, he'll tell you everything.
Okay.
So at this point, he hadn't confessed to anything. He wouldn't confess to these killings. So Sergeant Corcoran sent investigators to the prison, and Stefani asked them to take a photo of his mother's tombstone and bring it to him.
Oh, wow.
And basically Sergeant Corcoran was like, that's all he wants? Like, go for it. Like, go. Do it now.
Yeah.
Oh, your next slide. This is Paul Stefani.
Okay. So the upper right-hand picture, that's pretty much what I was imagining.
Okay, so the bottom pictures are his prior arrest mugshots.
Okay.
The upper left is his arrest right after Denise Williams hit him with a bottle in the face, and that's why he's all, like, bandaged.
Yeah.
And then the right one is just, like, a headshot. So, Sergeant Corcoran sends these investigators out to take a picture of his mother's headstone, and then they go and they give it to him. After they did this, he confessed to all of the assaults and the murders.
Okay.
And he confessed to another murder that they didn't even know about.
Oh, my.
The thing was, he didn't remember any information about this woman. He didn't remember her home address. He didn't remember her name. All he remembered was he went to her house and drowned her in her bathtub.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's, like, totally not him. Like, that's not his
yeah,
MO.
I don't know if it was just like a crime of opportunity or what, but I don't know. So police went to the ME's office and they researched freshwater drownings that had occurred during the time frame.
Right.
And they found a woman named Kathleen Greening who was found dead in her bathtub in July of 1982, which would make her the third victim.
Okay.
The next slide is her.
I have to say, it's interesting to me. I feel like and this could just be like, because I watch too many crime shows, this might not be that realistic of a serial killer trait. But I feel like whenever I think of these crimes where they're committing it because something in particular happened, like with his girlfriend, I expect for the victims to, like, resemble her.
Well, in some cases, yes. Ted Bundy is one of those, only killed brunettes with middle parts.
Yeah, but these girls are all very different looking.
Oh, absolutely. You've got a brunette. You have an 18-year-old brunette, a 20-year-old Native American woman, a 40-year-old, like, sandy blonde nurse, a young African American woman, and a 33-year-old white blonde lady.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah. I don't know if for him it was just women.
Yeah, just opportunity.
Yeah.
And clearly, if he had the pick in his glove box, like, he's just ready to go.
Especially because, like, with Denise Williams, it was just like, I have a sex worker.
Yeah.
Yeah, might as well. Kathy Greening was a 33-year-old school teacher. Her death had been being investigated, and her husband was the main suspect.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, Stefani had details that only the killer would really know, though.
Probably the biggest sigh of relief her husband has ever breathed.
Truly, for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
Stefani described her apartment, and he also mentioned putting her purse into a mailbox like he had done with Barbara Simons.
Interesting.
Yeah. Her purse was actually in evidence, and police went to evidence and found her address book in her purse. And inside her address book, there was a Paul S. with Paul Stefani's phone number. I don't know. It wasn't explained any further than that. No.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I hate that.
I'm sorry. I wish I had more information on that. I knew you'd want it, but I don't have it.
I know. It's not your fault.
Kathy Greening was killed 2 weeks before Simons.
Wow.
Though he never called about it.
Yeah.
He didn't do a phone call.
I wonder why.
I don't know. The only thing I can imagine is that if they had talked about Alan Lopez, he was, like, trying to lay low. Because it was the Barbara Simon call that kind of, like, oh, well, it's not that guy.
Yeah.
I don't know. At this point, he was starting to be interviewed by media in prison.
Okay.
Because he had now confessed. They were interested.
Yeah.
He said in these interviews that he didn't know why he had killed these women. but he implied in them that he heard voices.
Okay.
He would talk about, like, I don't know, because, like, basically, I've watched them, and I feel like, I don't know if he's implying that he hears voices, or if he's just saying, like, I'm feeling an uncontrollable urge, as if it is saying this. Because what he said was basically that it was, like, time to kill, Paul, time to kill. Like, this is the time to do it. I don't know. Could be literal voices, could just be a feeling.
Right.
During these interviews, he also recounted how he killed Greening. Like, he talks about feeling very strange because he was, like, smiling during the drowning, and how he, like, kind of came to and thought, like, what are you doing? She's dying. And just kept going. He also talked about how he had lured Compton away from a restaurant. So she was at a restaurant that's where he met her.
Yeah.
He lured her away to kill her.
Oh, man.
He even had said that after one of the murders, he attended church because his mother had said, quote, if something hurts you, go to God.
Maybe that was after the Kathleen, where he didn't call. Maybe it was because he went to church.
Possibly. So everyone wanted to know, like, why confess these crimes now? Like, what's going on? And he admitted that he had been diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Oh.
And that he wanted to apologize to the victims.
Well, a little late
Which,
for
like,
that.
too late, Paul. Yeah. He talks in these interviews about how he doesn't know if he's going to hell or not. But that's for God to decide.
About to find out.
Yeah, really. Because on June 12th, 1998, he died in the infirmary of the Oak Park Heights prison. And that is the end of this story. I have no other information.
Wow.
Excuse me.
That's
the Weepy voice killer.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
It makes me wonder if he did have some sort of voices in his head, or if he just had intrusive thoughts and impulse control issues.
Could be.
Because, I mean, intrusive thoughts can, quote, tell you to do some crazy stuff. But
I had a hard time for a long time explaining intrusive thoughts to my mom. Because she was like, it's not voices though, like it's not. I'm like, no, they're not voices. It's just like a.
What if?
Yeah, like every time you hold a baby, and you're like, what if I just dropped this?
Or what if I just spiked it like a football?
Exactly. What if I just turned my wheel very sharply?
I could just
and drove into this ravine. Whoop. It would be fine.
Yeah, I think. Anyone who doesn't experience them, I can understand why it would be strange. I've always had them, so to me it's like I had to realize that those are not normal.
Yeah. I think everybody has intrusive thoughts. I just think that everybody doesn't spiral into them. And
that the severity maybe isn't the same across the board.
Yes, exactly. Would you like to talk about reading and recommending?
Yes. Okay.
It's been so long.
Oh my God, I know. So, I don't love Audible just because based on principle, I'm a librarian. I want to get my books from the library. But thanks to Amazon, that's not always possible with audiobooks because they own Audible and they made a lot of stuff exclusive, right? So, I just got myself signed up for an Audible trial.
Okay.
And I borrowed, I haven't begun it yet, but it's next in my list.
You didn't borrow it.
I'm
own
sorry.
it.
I didn't start it yet.
Okay.
But let me see here. Let me get to the information. It is it not going to tell me which number it is in the series now? Ooh, it's just going to play. Hold on.
Here, I can look it up for you.
Yeah. It's Tower of Dawn
Okay.
which is, I think, number 6.
What's the author's name?
Sarah with an H, J Mass with 2 A's.
You love Sarah Maas.
I know. Well, I just need to finish the series because I started.
Tower of Dawn is number 6.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So the trial that I got actually gave me 2 free credits, and the whole
Excellent.
series, the audio is exclusive to Audible.
That stinks.
Yeah, I know, right? But 6 and 7, I was able to get those just with the trial. So that's going to be my next little project, is going to be trying to finish this series, which I know I talked about like months ago on the podcast. But it is a fantasy series. It's a little bit of a bodice ripper. It's like technically YA, but I would definitely put it in new adult fiction.
Yeah.
Because they're young. They're like 19, 20, kind of age range. So that would definitely fall more into new adult. But it's a really cool, like, fantasy romancy novel. So
excellent.
yeah, I'm gonna try
Sounds
and
like
finish
a good time.
that. So this is book 6. So like I'm recommending the series as a whole.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely put all of them onto our bookshop list.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so hopefully I can get them finished. I set a reading goal for this year. So
Yay.
Nothing crazy. Just one book a month is the hope.
That's fine.
Yeah, so it's doable.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Yeah. It's nice to like have a spot to write it down and in my journal and all that.
Yeah, I have one. I have one as well in my
Now
journal.
you do.
I just started a book that Kathy gave me called The Outside Boy by Janine Cummins.
Okay.
It is about a boy in 1950s Ireland who is a traveler. So he is they call themselves Pavi, or travelers. Outside people call them gypsies. But he is a Pavi boy, and he is sort of dealing with, at the very beginning, dealing with the death of his grandfather, and trying to I guess, reconcile being outside, so to say, like literally an outside person, and also outside from society. So I'm enjoying it thus far, but I'll let you all know when I'm done.
Yeah.
It's on my list.
Yeah, right. See here, from the best-selling author of American Dirt.
Yes.
So yeah, maybe if you enjoyed American Dirt, that's one to check out.
Elizabeth?
Yes, Hannah.
Where can the people find us?
We are Briefcase Crimes everywhere across all social media platforms. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. You can listen to full episodes anywhere that you listen to podcasts, as well as on YouTube. YouTube is a little bit behind, but it is getting caught up as we go. If you would like to support us monetarily, you can buy us a coffee on coffee.com/briefcasecrimes. That's KO-FI. Or you can purchase any of our book recommendations on bookshop.org. They support local bookstores by donating 75% of profits to local bookstores, and they support us through our affiliate link by giving us 10% of the profits as well. So those are all great ways to find us, interact with us, and support us if you are in a position to do so and if you would like to do so.
Excellent work, Elizabeth.
Why, thank you.
I was definitely here for all of that.
100%. And I definitely didn't leave you any audio surprises for when you're editing.
I'm very excited now. Okay. And with that, would you like to wrap this up?
Yes. Thank you all so much for listening.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
No wonder I can smell you through the screen.